The Polish minority in the Soviet Union refers to people of Polish descent who used to reside in the Soviet Union before its 1991 dissolution, and who live in post-Soviet, sovereign countries of Europe and Asia as the significant minorities at present time, including Lithuania, Belarus, Ukraine, Russia, Kazakhstan and Azerbaijan among others. History of Poles in the Soviet Union. 1917 to 1920. Millions of Poles lived within the Russian Empire following the military partitions of Poland throughout the 19th century. Germany took over Polish lands during the World War I. Many Poles were evacuated or run away with Russian troops. As the Russian Revolution of 1917 began in Petrograd, followed by the Russian Civil War, the majority of the Polish population saw cooperation with the Bolshevik forces as betrayal and treachery to Polish national interests. Polish writer and philosopher Stanislaw Ignacy Witkiewicz lived through the Russian Revolution while in St. Petersburg. What he saw had a profound effect on his works, many of which display themes of the horrors of Bolshevism he witnessed. Among the many Polish victims of the revolution was the father of Polish eminent composer Witold Lutosławski. Marian Lutosławski and his brother Joseph, murdered in Moscow in 1918 as alleged counter-revolutionaries. There were also people of Polish background associated with the communist movement. Famous revolutionaries with Polish origins include Konstantin Rokossowski, Julian Marchlewski, Karol Wojciechowski and Felix Dzerzhinsky, founder of the Czech secret police which would later turn into the NKVD. However, according to their ideology they did not identify as Poles or with Poland. Members of the Communist Party viewed themselves as Soviet citizens without any national sentiments. The Soviet Union also organized Polish units in the Red Army and a Polish communist government in exile. However, these organizations were Polish in name only and led by non-Poles, Russians in the case of the Polish Army. Provisional Polish Revolutionary Committee was created in 1920 but failed to control Poland. Polish communities were inherited from Imperial Russia after the creation of the Soviet Union. After World War I, Poland became an independent country, and its borders with the USSR were finalized by the Peace of Riga in 1921 at the end of the Polish-Soviet War, which left significant territories populated by Poles within the Soviet Union. According to the 1926 Soviet census, there were a total of 782,334 Poles in the USSR. The largest concentration of Poles was in Ukraine, where according to the Soviet census in 1926, 476,435 Poles lived. Those estimates are considered to have been lowered by Soviet officials. Church and independent estimates show estimates of 650,000 to 700,000 Poles living in that area. This suggests that the total Polish population of the USSR was in excess of 1 million. Initially, the Soviets pursued a policy where the local, national language was used as a tool for eradication of national identity in favor of communist education of masses. In the case of the Poles, this meant a goal of Sovietization of the Polish population. However, this proved extremely difficult as the Soviet communists themselves realized that the Poles were en masse opposed to communist ideology, seeing it as hostile to Polish identity. The policy of religious discrimination, plunder and terror further strengthened Polish resistance to Soviet rule. As a result, the Soviet authorities started to imprison and forcefully remove all those seen as an obstacle to the policies. In a short time, prisons in areas with a Polish minority were overcrowded by 600%. 2 Polish autonomous districts were created, with one in Belarus and one born in Ukraine. The first one was named Jashinshyna after Felix Jashinsky. The second was named Marchlushchizna after Julian Marchlovsky. Following the failure of the Sovietization of the USSR's Polish minority, the Soviet rulers decided to portray Poles as enemies of the state and use them to fuel Ukrainian nationalism in order to direct Ukrainian anger away from the Soviet government. After 1928, Soviet policies turned to outright eradication of Polish national identity. Special centers were established where the youth was indoctrinated towards hatred against the Polish state. All contacts with relatives within Poland were dangerous and could result in imprisonment. Newspapers printed out in the Polish language were de facto used to print anti-Polish propaganda. Following attacks on the Polish minority, for the 18th of February 1930 till the 19th of March 1930, over 100,000 people from Polish areas were expelled by the Soviet authorities. Following the collectivization of agriculture under Joseph Stalin, both autonomies were abolished and the populations were subsequently deported to Kazakhstan in 1934 to 1938. Many people starved during the deportation and after, since the deported were moved to sparsely populated areas, unprepared for migration, lacking basic facilities and infrastructure. The survivors were under the supervision of the OGPU NKVD, cruelly punished for any sign of discontent. 21,000 Poles died during the Holodomor. In 1936, the Poles were deported from the territories Belarus and Ukraine adjacent to the state border. Tens of thousands of ethnic Poles became victims of the Great Purge in 1937–1938. The Communist Party of Poland was also decimated in the Great Purge and was disbanded in 1938. Another decimated group of Poles was the Roman Catholic clergy, who opposed the forced Adization. A number of Poles fled to Poland during this time, among them Igor Newey and Tadeusz Borowski. 1939–1947. During World War II, after the Soviet invasion of Poland, the Soviet Union occupied vast areas of eastern Poland, and another 5.2 to 6.5 million ethnic Poles were added, followed by further large-scale forcible deportations to Siberia, Kazakhstan and other remote areas of the Soviet Union. The number of Poland's citizens held captive in the Soviet Union is a matter of dispute, and ranges from over 300,000 up to nearly 2 million, according to various sources. On March 30, 2004, the head of the Archival Service of Russian Foreign Intelligence Service, General Vasily Christoforov, gave alleged exact numbers of deported Poles. According to him, in 1940 exactly 297,280 Poles were deported. In June 1941 another 40,000. These numbers do not include POWs, prisoners, small groups, people arrested trying to cross the new borders, people who voluntarily moved into the USSR, and men drafted into the Red Army and into construction battalions as Stroybats. In August 1941, following the German attack on the USSR and the dramatic change in Soviet-Polish relations, according to a January 15, 1943, note from Beria to Stalin, 389,041 Polish citizens held in special settlements and prisoner of war camps were granted amnesty and allowed to enroll in Polish army units. The location of reception centers was kept secret and no travel facilities provided. Nevertheless, 119,855 Polish Poles were evacuated to Persia with General Anda's army, which subsequently fought alongside the Allies in Iran and Italy. 36,150 were transferred to the Polish army, which fought with the Red Army on the Eastern Front, and 11,516 are reported to have died in 1941 to 1943. The following are cases of direct executions of Poles during the 1939 to 1941 occupation. Katyn massacre, about 22,000. Executions of prisoners after the German invasion 1941. After World War II, most Poles from Krasie were expelled into Poland, but officially 1.3 million stayed in the USSR. Some of them were motivated by the traditional Polish belief that one day they would become again lawful owners of the land they lived on. Some of them were kept forcefully in. Some simply stayed, without force or ideological reasons. Wanda Wasilewska was an exceptional case. She became a Soviet citizen and did not return after the war. The Polish minority was one of the few whose numbers decreased over time, according to official statistics. There was also the repatriation of Poles. After 1989, Poles who survived in Kazakhstan started to emigrate due to national tensions, mainly to Russia and, supported by an immigration society, to Poland. The number remaining is between 50,000 and 100,000. After the dissolution of the Soviet Union in 1991, the following post-Soviet countries have significant Polish minorities: Lithuania, around 250,000. See also Polish minority in Lithuania. Belarus, at least 420,000. See also Polish minority in Belarus. Ukraine, at least 150,000. See also Polish minority in Ukraine. Russia, more than 100,000. See also Polish minority in Russia. Kazakhstan, between 60,000 and 100,000. See also Poles in Kazakhstan. Latvia, around 50,000. See also Poles in Latvia. Azerbaijan, between 1,000 and 2,000. See also Poles in Azerbaijan. Polish minorities are also found in Georgia, Moldova and Uzbekistan. Demographics. The Polish population in the Soviet Union peaked in 1959, decreased by about 20% by 1970, and then decreased extremely slowly between 1970 and 1989. List of prominent Soviet Poles. Vikenty Veresev, writer. Felix Dzerzhinsky, creator and the first chairman of the Soviet Security Service, Cheka, later GPU, OGPU. Vyacheslav Menchinsky, chairman of the OGPU. Gleb Shizhanovsky, chief of the Russian Electrification Commission, responsible for fulfillment of the GOENRO program. Myakoslav Kozlovsky, communist diplomat and lawyer. Kazimir Malevich, painter, pioneer of geometric abstract art and the originator of the avant-garde suprematist movement. Yuri Olishev, writer. Thomas D. Ball, communist politician. Konstantin Rokossovsky, Marshal of the Soviet Union, planner and director of Operation Bagration. Konstantin Tsiolkovsky, rocket scientist. Stanislav Kosia, General Secretary of the Ukrainian Communist Party, Deputy Prime Minister of the USSR, and a member of the Politburo of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. One of the principal so-called architects of the Ukrainian famine of 1932 to 1933. Karol Wiechewski, General Commander of the Polish Second Army during the fighting for Western Poland and the Battle of Berlin. Stanislav Poplavsky, general commander of the Polish First Army during the breakthrough of the Pomerance-to-Lung fortification line, securing the Baltic Sea coast, crossing the Oder and Elbe rivers and the Battle of Berlin. Sigismund Lewanewski, aircraft pilot, explorer of the Arctic. Andrei Vyshinsky, prosecutor general of the USSR, the legal mastermind of Joseph Stalin's Great Purge. Arseny Tarkovsky, poet and translator. Andrei Tarkovsky, filmmaker, writer, film editor, film theorist, theater and opera director. Dmitry Shostakovich, composer. Rostislav Plyat, actor. Mstislav Rostranpovich, cellist and conductor. Roland Bykov, actor. Edward Radzinsky, playwright, TV personality. Edita Pieka, singer, born in France, moved to USSR. Anatoly Sobchak, mayor of St. Petersburg. Sergei Yazhemsky, Russian politician, President Vladimir Putin's chief spokesperson on the Second Chechen War, head of the Kremlin's Information Policy Department coordinating Putin administration's external communications. Konstantin Petozak, physicist.